Well, you survived the pandemic. Ready for World War III? So if you've been spending time in the 2020s, you're probably starting to feel like it's pretty crazy if you're paying attention to the outside world. But there's something that's really important, and I'm mostly talking to people that are thinking about starting careers or maybe any other kind of big thing that they want to go into. It can be hard to start doing that when you look at the outside world and feel like it's unstable. You feel like it's crazy, and maybe even this decade, you feel like it's out to get you, because I think a lot of us actually feel that way. Now, this is understandable. There are actually legitimately things that have happened in the outside world, especially the pandemic, that could make it more difficult to succeed in setting out for, say, that career. You know, the pandemic no doubt cost people job opportunities. And even though they may have been behaving following the guidelines, the CDC is not going to pay their bills for them either. So it's understandable to be fearful of these things because you can't control them, and at the same time, they're not going to give you a coupon that you can redeem to win, basically. So, but that's not the right way to think at all, actually. I remember feeling that way, that I didn't want to start with my degree. I didn't want to start my career because, well, things are just too crazy and there's these things happening in the world and that could mess me up. And when you're doing something like starting a career, it can feel daunting that you have a lot of things that have to go right for you. You have to get into the university that you want to go to. You have to be maybe accepted into that program. At that point, you have to be able to pass the classes, and there are a lot of them and they're challenging. You might feel like, just doing those things is challenging enough on your own, much less if you have to deal with these things trying to knock you off the horse from the outside world. So beyond that in your career, it gets even harder. You then have to go find a job, possibly find internships. You need to gain the skills to make you qualified for that internship or job. So there's a lot that needs to go your way. A lot of it can feel very luck-based, and some of it is luck-based. And you might just feel like when you look at the outside world, things are not going in a good direction, so this is not a good time for me to go down this avenue. Now, there are a lot of reasons to perhaps not do this thing you're thinking of doing, which, if that's going for a career, there are a lot of good reasons. Like if you have some kind of issue going on in your life that would literally prevent you. But one of the good reasons is not because the outside world is crazy. And the biggest reason for that is that the outside world is always going to be crazy. I'm sorry to tell you that, and I wish it were better, but it's not. It's always going to be trying to knock you off the horse, and there's going to be some times that it's going to do it in ways that you can't control. And you just have to get back up, and you have to keep going. Now, I think the biggest thing to remember, though, is that it's not as bad as you think. Especially if you're like watching the news and you're watching all these terrible things happen, and it starts to feel like sort of society as a whole is against you, but the truth is the complete opposite of that. And that's because society is really made up of people that are just trying to keep the lights on. They're just trying to keep the water running. They're just trying to keep the internet working. They're just trying to keep themselves and potentially others in a good place. And the way that they do that is by providing value to the rest of society. And that's basically what society is. It's not all this crazy stuff you hear in the news. It's really more just a bunch of people trying to maintain the status quo. And that may sound bad, but the status quo, in my opinion, is actually pretty good, especially if you compare it to what people have had in the past. So the reason something like starting a new career is a safe choice, even when the world itself is crazy, is because you are going in the direction that society, at least the real society, wants you to go in. Now, I'll give you an example. I bought this house during the pandemic. Now, I had a lot of those thoughts, a lot of those, well, this isn't the best time to take a risk like this. There's all this stuff going on. There's all these things that I have to follow. And what if they just lock everything down when I'm about to close on the house? Or, what if something gets in the way like that? So I shouldn't have been worried about that in the first place, because they weren't going to lock down selling houses or applying for, titles or insurance, because that's something that makes people money. And that might sound bad, but that's how those people lend themselves to society. They lend you a hand in these services, and through that service, you end up paying money which they like and they need to sustain themselves. But throughout that, you are really playing into the rules of society, and the same is true for a career. We're going to look out for you here, as humans. It's each individual in society. We're going to I don't want to say have your back, but you're on our good side. You're doing the thing we need you to do. We think about things like this, that, universities have thought about, during the pandemic, hey, we can't just shut down classes. We have to find some way to move forward. Now, is it suboptimal in some cases? Yes, but with the way the world is, there's always a chance that things will be suboptimal. And that's actually, I would say, a little bit, I want to say, subjective, because there's some people that the remote learning thing has worked quite well for them. So anyway, I think if you're worried about the outside world, don't just work on yourself.